My name is Ingrid. I'm 34 years old. And the last time my whole family laughed at me, my 8-year-old son ended the party with one question. But that moment didn't arrive on its own. It started 6 weeks earlier in a stack of numbers that didn't add up. 6 years ago, my husband left a note on the kitchen counter. Not a letter, not a conversation, just 4 words. I can't do this. His ring was sitting next to the toaster. Devin was too. For a whole week, he pressed his face against the front door glass, waiting. I kept pulling him back, making a sound I pretended was a laugh. I had $340 in my checking account and half an accounting degree, so I finished the degree at night. I passed the CPA exam with Devin sleeping on a folded blanket under my desk because I couldn't afford a sitter past 9. By 29, I had my own forensic accounting practice. Just me, a laptop, and a rented office above a dry cleaner that smelled like chemical lavender. By 34, I had 11 steady clients, a mortgage 3 years ahead, and a son who could name every dinosaur that ever lived. None of that mattered to my family. To my mother, Carol, I was still the daughter who couldn't keep a man. To my sister, Nia, I was a cautionary tale, proof that she had made the smarter choice. Mom called every Sunday at 4. She never asked how I was. The call always started with Nia. Nia's new kitchen tile. Nia's promotion. Nia's husband Mike and the trip they took to Hilton Head. Once, I mentioned Devin made the honor roll. Mom said, "That's nice," and pivoted immediately. "Your sister figured it out, Ingrid. She made the right choices." One Easter, Devin accidentally knocked a glass off the table. Mom cleaned it up, looked at me, and sighed. "Your sister made smarter choices, Ingrid. That's all. That's all." Like it was weather. Like it was just the way things worked. I learned to hold my face very still when she said things like that. Devin learned too. He'd go quiet and press into my side, his small fist gripping my sleeve. He was 8 years old and already knew when a room had turned against us. Mike was 36. Broad-shouldered, easy smile, grilled steaks at every cookout, brought Mom flowers on her birthday, called her Mom with a wink. The whole family treated him like a trophy Nia had earned for doing life correctly. Nobody questioned the business trips. Mike traveled every other weekend, territory visits, he called them, covering accounts across the Tri-County area. Sometimes he'd leave Thursday and come back Monday tired, smelling like a different soap. Nobody blinked. I do numbers for a living. I know when something doesn't add up, but I pushed the thought down, the way I pushed down everything else. Questioning Mike meant questioning Nia, and questioning Nia meant another Sunday call about choices. Mike offered to pick Devin up from school one afternoon so I could meet a client deadline. Devin's face lit up. "Uncle Mike said we'd get milkshakes, Mom." I said yes. When they came back, Devin was happy and sticky-faced, carrying a small paper bag. "Uncle Mike got me a toy." A race car. Red. Small. The packaging read, ages 2-4. Devin was 8. He bought 2, Devin said. "One for me and one for..." He stopped. "One for who, Dev?" He bit his lip. I wasn't supposed to say. I let it go. Later, moving Devin's jacket from Mike's truck, a crumpled receipt fell out of the pocket. Gas station. Animal crackers. A juice box. The station was in Marbleton, 40 minutes east, past the county line, nowhere near Mike's sales territory. I smoothed the receipt on my kitchen counter and stared at it the way I stare at a column that won't reconcile. Devin didn't have a little brother. So whose race car was that? I started knitting the baby blanket 3 weeks before the shower. Pale yellow yarn, soft enough for a newborn's cheek. I worked on it after Devin went to bed, sitting cross-legged on the couch with the TV muted, pulling yarn through loops until my fingers ached. Each row was a sentence I couldn't say out loud. I love my sister. I want her baby to be warm. I want someone at that shower to look at what I made and see me. Not the single mom, not the rough draft, not the bad choice, just me. I finished the last knot at midnight on a Tuesday, held it up under the kitchen light. Devin wandered in half asleep and squinted at it. "It's really yellow, Mom." "It's pale yellow. It's really pale yellow." I folded it into tissue paper and told myself a blanket could change how they saw me. It couldn't. But something else would. 4 days before the shower, Mike texted me. "Hey Ingrid, quick favor, trying to refinance. Bank wants organized statements. You're the numbers person. Could you glance at these?" He sent 3 PDFs. I opened them at 11 at night with cold coffee and Devon's math homework spread across the table. Standard household spending. Groceries, gas, Mia's prenatal copays. Then I saw it. A recurring auto pay, asterisk $1,450 per month to a property management company in Marbleton. I scrolled. Another charge, $620 per month to something called Bright Horizons Children's Center, also in Marbleton. A daycare. Mia and Mike didn't have a child yet. Their baby wasn't due for 2 more months. I sat with those numbers for a long time. The coffee went from cold to forgotten. A rental in Marbleton could be an investment. The daycare could be for a relative's kid. There are always explanations when you're looking at numbers you don't want to understand. I closed the laptop. I didn't sleep. I ran the numbers again. The Marbleton rent had been active for asterisk 37 months. The daycare payments for asterisk 31 months. Both started before Nia and Mike's wedding. Mike was funding a second household on a schedule more reliable than his mortgage. My hands were shaking and I was angry at them for shaking. I've untangled embezzlement schemes. I've caught expense padding. Numbers don't scare me. But these numbers had my sister's name on them, and my nephew or niece growing inside her. And a holiday table I still sat at every December, even though nobody saved me a good chair. I told myself it wasn't my problem. I picked up Devon's math homework and checked his long division. He'd gotten every answer right. "You're good at this, Dev." He grinned. "I learned from you." 3 days before the shower, Mike picked Devon up again. I almost said no. Something in my gut twitched the way a number twitches on a spreadsheet before you find the error. But Devon begged. They were gone 3 hours. When Devon came home, he was quieter than usual. He sat on his bed, pulling off his sneakers one at a time, slowly, like he was thinking hard. "Mom, can I tell you something?" Always. Uncle Mike took me to a house. Not his house, a different one. There was a lady with red hair and a little boy. The boy's name is Cody. He's really small, maybe 3. Uncle Mike called the lady Sarah. She made us sandwiches. Cody showed me his toy trucks. Devon looked up at me, his eyes wide and careful. Uncle Mike said it's a surprise. He said don't tell anyone, especially Aunt Nia. He said it's like a birthday present. You don't talk about it before the day. An 8-year-old can hold a surprise. He can keep a birthday gift secret for weeks. But a surprise ends in a smile. A secret ends in a room that goes silent. I put my arm around him and said the only thing I could. "Thank you for telling me, Dev. You didn't do anything wrong." The next morning, emptying Devon's backpack, a folded piece of construction paper fell out between a crumpled permission slip and a half-eaten granola bar. 2 houses. The one on the left had a triangle roof and green grass. A stick figure labeled asterisk Aunt Nia with a round belly. The one on the right was smaller, drawn in orange crayon. 3 figures, a tall man labeled asterisk Daddy Mike, a woman with red scribbles labeled asterisk Aunt Saris, and a tiny boy labeled asterisk Cody. Shoot. Between the 2 houses, Devon had drawn a road with a little car on it. The car had a smile. On the back, in Devon's careful block letters, was an address. I folded the drawing and put it in my cardigan pocket. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up the county assessor's public records, the same database I use for asset searches in fraud cases. I typed in 42012 Elm. The property came back as a 2-bedroom rental unit leased to a asterisk Michael and Sarah Dunning since April 3 years ago. Devon had given me the child. The records gave me the adults. I sat in my dark kitchen and did the math I didn't want to do. Cody was 3. Nia and Mike had gotten married 3.5 years ago, which meant Mike had fathered a child with another woman either just before or just after his wedding. 37 months of rent, 31 months of daycare, a second home, a second child, a second life, 40 minutes from the nursery Nia had painted sage green. I didn't cry. I made a list. That's what accountants do when the numbers tell a story no one wants to hear. I was not going to explode this at a baby shower. Mia was 7 months pregnant. There would be 30 guests. Dropping this in front of all of them would be cruelty, not justice. My plan was simple. Wait until after the shower. Ask Mia to meet me for coffee. Just us. No Mom. No Mike. I'd bring the bank statements, the public records, Devon's drawing. I'd sit across from her and tell her gently, The way you deliver hard news to someone you love, even when they've spent years making sure you knew they didn't love you back. She deserved to hear it from her sister, not from a courtroom, not from Sarah showing up at her door one day. I also knew I could help. Forensic accounting exists for exactly this kind of situation: hidden assets, undisclosed dependents, marital misconduct that affects property division. I could trace every dollar Mike had funneled to Marbleton. It was a good plan. Quiet, private, principled. Truth is a scalpel, not a hammer. You use it where it heals. I had 72 hours. I didn't account for an 8-year-old. I texted Mike, short and direct. We need to talk about Marbleton. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. I don't know what you think you know, Ingrid. I know about the lease. I know about the daycare. I know about the Cody. This time the dots didn't dance. He called. His voice was low and tight. The voice of a man choosing between anger and negotiation. You went through my statements. You asked me to look at them, Mike. Silence. 10 seconds. Then he chose the door he was always going to choose. Stay out of my marriage, Ingrid. People already know what you are. Bitter, jealous, alone. If you say one word to Nia, I'll make sure the whole family believes it's revenge. I looked at Devin's drawing on the refrigerator, held up by a dinosaur magnet. I'm not telling anyone at the shower. I'm asking you to tell Nia yourself before the baby. That's not going to happen. Then I'll tell her after. Privately, she deserves to know. She deserves a husband who's there, and that's what I am. He hung up. Mike had 2 days to come clean. He spent them posting photos. Nia kissing his cheek. Caption, almost time. 32,000 hearts. I went to bed with my phone face down. Mom's backyard looked like a page from a magazine I couldn't afford to subscribe to. A balloon arch in blush and gold. White folding chairs tied with ribbons. A 3-tier cake on a pedestal. Baby Dunning in cursive fondant. A mimosa bar, a photo booth, a clothesline of tiny onesies. Devin and I pulled in at 7:58. I wore the navy dress with pockets. Devin wore his dinosaur tie. He'd combed his own hair, a cowlick standing straight up in the back like a flag. I want to look nice, Mom. It's a party. I smoothed it down with a wet palm and told him he looked perfect. He beamed. My son was excited to go to a party where nobody would save him a good seat. That's the thing about kids. They keep showing up for people who don't show up for them. Mom met us at the side gate. She didn't say hello. She pointed at the stack of chairs against the garage wall. Those need to go in the backyard. 5 rows of 6. Make sure the ribbons face front. Clacked. Good morning, Mom. She looked at Devin. He can sit in the hallway. There's a folding chair by the coat rack. Her grandson, assigned to a hallway chair like an afterthought. I knelt in front of Devin and straightened his tie. You're going to sit with me, I whispered. He nodded. We set up 30 chairs in the June heat while caterers carried silver trays past us without making eye contact. The gift table was a monument, a bugaboo stroller still in plastic, a cashmere sleep sack, a white noise machine that cost more than my first car payment, crystal frames, envelopes with checks, bags with curled ribbons. I set my gift at the end of the row. It looked exactly how I knew it would look. Small. Soft wrapped in tissue paper, slightly wrinkled from Devin carrying it under his arm. When Nia finally reached mine, she pulled back the tissue and held the pale yellow blanket between 2 fingers, like she was checking fabric at a clearance sale. Oh, she tilted her head. Homemade. That's so you, Ingrid? She set it on the chair behind her, not on the display table with the other gifts. Not in her lap. On the folding chair. Like a napkin she'd deal with later. 2 women next to me exchanged a glance. One pressed her lips together. Devin's hand found mine under the table and squeezed. The blanket I'd spent 3 weeks making. Every midnight stitch. Every row of pale yellow yarn crumpled on a folding chair while Nia held up a $200 swaddle set and the room erupted. I squeezed Devin's hand back and kept my face still. At 2 o'clock, Mom stood with a champagne glass. The yard went quiet. 30 faces turned toward her. To my beautiful daughter Nia and to Mike, who gave her everything a mother could hope for. A real home. A real partnership. A complete family. She paused on complete and let it sit. I felt the word land on me like a hand pressing my shoulder down. Complete. As opposed to what? Incomplete. Broken. Me. Nia, sweetheart, you did it the right way. You built something strong, something lasting, and now you're bringing a baby into a family that's whole. She lifted her glass. To the Dunnings. 30 voices echoed. Glasses clinked. People drank. Mike kissed Nia's temple. His lips pressed there exactly 3 seconds. I counted. Because I count things when I can't control anything else. 3 seconds of performance. The dig came during the advice round. Kelsey, loud voice, perfect blowout, asked Nia what she was most excited about. Nia grinned, rubbed her belly. Then she looked at me, not at the crowd, not at Kelsey, at me. And I watched the line form on her lips before she said it. Honestly, I'm just grateful my baby is going to have a complete home. 2 parents, a father who shows up every single day. She paused. At least my baby will have a father. The laugh that rolled through the yard was instant. Not all 30 people, but enough. 15, maybe 20. Some covered their mouths. Some didn't bother. 2 of Nia's friends actually clapped. Palms hitting palms, the same sound you make when a comedian lands a punchline. Except the punchline was 6 years of my life, and the comedian was my sister, and the stage was a backyard where I'd set up the chairs that morning. Mike stared at the grass. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Mom pressed her lips together and said nothing. She sat in her cushioned chair, the good one, the one with the armrests, and let the laughter happen the way a judge lets a verdict stand. Devin's hand found mine again under the table. His grip was so tight his knuckles turned white, the bones of his fingers pressing into my palm, 8 years old, holding me together. Then Mom leaned forward, her voice quiet, the kind of quiet that cuts deeper than loud. Some women just make bad choices. She wasn't looking at Nia. She was looking at me. A few women nodded. Diane murmured, "That's right." The yard settled into a satisfied hum, the kind a room makes when everyone agrees and no one's uncomfortable, except the person they're agreeing about. Devin tugged my sleeve. "Mom, sit down and be quiet, sweetheart." That was Mom. Not to me. To Devin, my son, trying to say something. And she shut him down from 4 feet away without even looking at him. Like he was background noise. Like he was part of my bad choice. I felt Devin's fingers release my sleeve. And I felt something in me shift, not snap, not break. Shift? Like a foundation settling. I put my hand on his knee under the table. I breathed in. I breathed out. I was going to stand up, collect my son, and walk out of this yard with my head level and my car keys in my pocket. I was going to leave. Then my son stood up. He didn't shout. He didn't cry. He stood up from his folding chair the way a kid stands up when the teacher calls his name. Straight-backed, serious, his dinosaur tie slightly crooked. The yard was still murmuring, still settling, people reaching for champagne and phones. Devin's voice cut through all of it, clear, steady. The voice of a child who had been told to be quiet and had decided, the way only 8-year-olds decide things, that the adults were wrong. "Aunt Nia, should I tell everyone about Uncle Mike's other family?" The sound didn't stop. It evaporated. 1 second there were 30 people breathing and clinking and shifting in their chairs. The next second, nothing. I'd been in conference rooms when a fraud finding is read aloud. I've watched CEOs go pale. I've seen silence that costs people their careers. I have never heard a silence like the one my son made in that backyard. Nia's smile didn't fall. It froze, like someone had paused a video 1 frame before the picture breaks apart. Mike was standing by the mimosa bar. His hand was around a glass. The glass didn't move. Nothing moved. Devin looked around the yard the way he looks around a classroom when he's answered a question and isn't sure he got it right. "Uncle Mike has another house," he said, quieter now, talking to Nia, but loud enough for the front row to hear. "With Aunt Sarah and a boy named Cody. He's 3. He showed me his trucks. 30 faces, every single one turning. Not toward Devin, not toward Nia, toward Mike. Mike, whose hand was still on the glass. Mike, whose face had gone the color of the fondant on the cake. Mike, who'd had 2 days to tell the truth and spent them posting photos with 32,000 hearts. Nia laughed. It was the worst laugh I've ever heard. High, thin, cracking at the edges like plaster before it falls. What is he talking about? She looked at me, not at Mike. Ingrid, what did you tell him? I didn't answer. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Mike answered for all of us by moving. He set the glass down too hard. Champagne sloshed over the rim. He took a step toward Devin and then stopped, because 30 people were watching, and a man who steps toward a child in front of witnesses knows exactly how that looks. He's confused, Mike said, his voice too loud. Kids make things up. He heard something on TV and I didn't hear it on TV. Devin's voice was calm. Calmer than Mike's. I went to the house. You took me there. Aunt Sarah, meat sandwiches. Mike's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Kelsey put her champagne down. Diane set her fork on the table. Mom hadn't moved from her chair. She was gripping the armrests with both hands. And for the first time in my life, I saw something on my mother's face I didn't recognize. It might have been fear. Ingrid, you put him up to this, Mike tried. She didn't. Devin looked at his uncle the way children look at adults when the math finally doesn't add up. I drew a picture. It's in my backpack. 20 heads turned toward the hallway, toward the coat rack, toward the folding chair where they had sent my son to be out of the way, and the small blue backpack hanging on its arm. Innocent men don't stand up that fast. Mike was already moving toward the door. Nia got to the backpack first. 7 months pregnant, and she crossed that yard faster than anyone. One hand under her belly, one reaching for the zipper. She pulled the construction paper out from between a juice box and a permission slip. She opened it. 2 houses. 1 smiling car. Daddy Mike. Aunt Sarah. Cody. Nia stared at the paper. I watched her eyes move from one crayon figure to the next, and I watched the drawing do what I had never wanted it to do here. Not like this. It dismantled her piece by piece. Mike. Her voice was low, controlled, almost professional, like she was reading a diagnosis. What is this? Explain the drawing. Explain Cody. Explain 37 months of rent I didn't know about. She'd done the math. Maybe not the exact number, that was mine, but she'd heard Devin say 3 years, and she'd counted backward past her own wedding. Mike looked at the drawing in her shaking hand. He looked at 30 faces staring at him from white folding chairs. He looked at the patio door behind him. He chose the door. He walked through it, grabbed his jacket off the hook, and left. The front door shut so quietly it was almost polite. His truck started 30 seconds later. Nobody followed him. Nia turned on me. I expected it. Grief needs a target, and Mike had just removed himself. You did this. You knew. And you brought your son here to humiliate me in front of everyone. You've always been jealous of me, Ingrid. Always. Always. I asked Mike to tell you himself. I said it quietly. Not cold, not smug. 2 days ago, I found the records doing the refinance work he asked me to do. I told him to come clean before the baby. He refused. The yard was so quiet I could hear a neighbor's sprinkler clicking 3 houses over. I wasn't going to say anything today. I had a plan to tell you privately after the shower. Gently. So why didn't you? Because my son heard what you said to me. And he's 8, and he thinks in straight lines. He connected, at least my baby has a father, with the fact that Uncle Mike already has another family. I paused. He wasn't trying to hurt you, Nia. He thought he was helping. Kelsey stood up quietly. Diane looked at the grass. 2 women in the back row collected their purses. Nia pressed both hands against her belly and stared at me like I was the one who had betrayed her. And maybe in her arithmetic I was. I didn't argue. I didn't list the receipts and the lease and the daycare invoices. I didn't say what I could have said, that the woman who'd called me a bad choice was now standing in the wreckage of the marriage she'd used as a trophy. And the only person in this yard who had tried to handle it with dignity was the one they'd been laughing at 20 minutes ago. I came here with a blanket, Nia. Not a bomb. He built the bomb. I just stopped lying about it. Nia sank into a folding chair, hands on her belly, eyes open but unfocused, staring at the balloon arch. For 1 second, just one, I saw my sister. Not the woman who'd mocked me. Not the woman who used my divorce as a party joke. My little sister. 29. Pregnant. sitting in a backyard full of witnesses to the worst moment of her life, realizing she was about to become the very thing she'd laughed at. A single mother. The moment passed. She didn't apologize. She didn't look at Devin. She pressed her face into her hands and cried. It was real. It was human. And it didn't undo a single thing she'd said. Mom stood up from her chair. She looked at Nia, then at me, then at the empty space where Mike had been standing. Her mouth opened and closed twice. The woman who always had a verdict, who'd spent 30 years handing down sentences about choices in arithmetic and which daughter got it right, had nothing. I didn't wait for her to find it. I walked to the folding chair behind the gift table and picked up the pale yellow blanket. I folded it carefully, the way I'd folded it the night I finished the last knot. Then I turned to my mother. Mom, you can call me when you're ready to have a conversation that doesn't start with what I did wrong. Until then, Devin and I are going home. She didn't respond. I took Devin's hand. His dinosaur tie had come loose. I fixed it as we walked through the side gate, past the balloon arch, past the 3-tier cake that said Baby Dunning in cursive. Devin looked up at me as we reached the car. Are you mad at me, Mom? No, baby. You told the truth. That's never bad. I buckled him in. I drove us home. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. Mike disappeared for 6 days. On day 3, a woman named Sarah called Nia's cell. She'd found the number in Mike's phone records. She was calm. She was exhausted. She had a 3-year-old who kept asking where Daddy went. They talked for 47 minutes. Nia called me afterward. Her voice was flat. The way voices go flat when all the shock has been used up. He took $23,000 from our joint savings over the last year. I didn't notice. How did I not notice? How did I not notice? Small transfers, irregular timing. It's textbook. Silence. Can you help me? 3 words. I'd waited 6 years to hear them from my sister. Yes, that's what I do. I spent the next 2 weeks pulling apart Mike's financial records, hidden assets in a business account, unreported income from a side contracting gig, 37 months of rent and daycare that affected the marital estate. I built the file the way I build every file. Methodical, document, admissible. Nia's lawyer looked at it and called it the most organized financial discovery she'd ever received from a non-attorney. Mom called once. She didn't say she was sorry. She said, I didn't know about Mike. You can call me when you're ready to have a conversation that doesn't start with what I did wrong. She hasn't called back yet. I mailed the blanket to Nia. The baby was innocent. The baby would need it. That night, Devin and I sat on the kitchen floor and ate ramen from mismatched bowls. No champagne, no balloon arches, no toasts about complete families. Devin had a noodle hanging from his chin and slurped it in with a sound that made us both laugh. Mom? Yeah, Dev? Aunt Anna Walls. Aunt Nia said my baby, meaning me, doesn't have a father. Is that bad? I put my bowl down. I pulled him into my side, noodle chin and all. You have me, I have you. We're not missing anything, Dev. He thought about it slowly, the way he turns everything over like a rock he found in the yard. What about Uncle Mike's other kid, Cody? Cody has people who love him too, even though the grown-ups messed it up. Even though the grown-ups messed it up, he repeated. Then, Mom, at the party when everybody laughed at you, I didn't think it was funny. I know, baby. That's why I said it. Not to be mean. Aunt Nia kept saying stuff about dads. And I kept thinking, but Uncle Mike already has a whole other family, so why is everybody laughing? His logic was clean. Cleaner than any courtroom argument, any financial audit, any speech I had rehearsed for a quiet coffee conversation. He saw a contradiction. He said it out loud. That's all? That's everything. He leaned into me and we sat there on the linoleum with the overhead light buzzing and the fridge humming and the smell of instant broth between us. 2 people. 1 kitchen floor. No audience. No ribbons. No arithmetic about what counts as complete. A family isn't whole because 2 parents stand in the photo. It's whole when no one in it has to lie to be loved. Devin taught a room full of grown-ups that in one sentence. And I've never been prouder to be the woman they called a bad choice.